Hello, everyone. Buckle up for a new episode of Jobamax Club, the one and only podcast made by Jobamax to give people the best advices to pursue their professional ambitions. Today, we're going to discuss about a fire topic, how to find your ideal company, with our guest, Albano Gega, CEO of Alza Ventures. Everyone is welcome to ask a question during the Q&A quarter or during the live. We will make our best efforts to answer everyone. By the end of this live, you will be able to look for a company that fits you more than ever. Albano, welcome.
Oh, thank you. There we go. The mic was muted there. Great to be here, Alexander. Thank you for having me. Really excited to do this with you.
Great. Can you please introduce yourself to our audience?
Absolutely. Yeah. So my name is Albano Gega. I own and run a company called Alza Ventures, primarily focusing in career development coaching and startup consultancy. I've been doing this work for a number of years. Also, I had some prior experience as a recruiter quite a while back. So I'm happy to share any and all insights from the other side of the equation as well for any job seekers and career changers out there.
Okay, great. Albano, we cannot get started with this topic without wondering about, first, what is an ideal company? The first question.
Yeah, absolutely. So an ideal company, if you're a job seeker, is a company that will not only sort of for you pose an opportunity to obviously be employed, to earn an income, and to kind of land a position where you can grow in terms of an upward trajectory, but it's a company that will naturally match, in my opinion, your value specifically in terms of what you hold close and dear in terms of the work you'll be doing. Oftentimes the clients that I'm working with one-on-one, we kind of look at it from the lens of being a job seeker and being someone who's obviously in the position to employ someone. There's a natural dichotomy that exists there, and we kind of want to close that gap initially to think through. It's not always that I, as a job seeker, need something, but it's how can this company actually fit me as well? So the interview primarily becomes a two-way conversation versus just a one-on-one sort of interrogation, if you will.
Okay, yeah, great. And should I be looking for the ideal company during this crisis that we are going through right now?
Sorry, say that one more time.
Should I be looking for the ideal company during this crisis that we're going through right now?
Well, I think it's a great question. I think it depends specifically on the circumstance of the individual, of course. Given some conditions and obviously COVID affecting everyone across the board, different people have different motivations. I think, though, to a degree, we shouldn't settle for just any job. And there are sort of definite ways and methodologies out there that can kind of support in you finding an ideal company, because a company shouldn't be just for 1 month or 2 months or 6 months or a year. Ideally, you're going to be there for a long time as you kind of foster new skills, develop new relationships, and can then leverage that if you need to transfer somewhere else. So you have to give yourself a way to always create a next jumping off point, if you will.
Exactly. And so then how do I find it?
How do we find? Well, isn't that the question? In terms of a company, for right now, I think primarily where everyone is going, especially because of COVID, everyone's mainly going on LinkedIn, and LinkedIn has seen a growth of about 2,400% in the last year in terms of usage. People are going on LinkedIn for an average about 17 minutes, but now there's 722 million users that at least have some presence on there. And while leveraging LinkedIn is important, it has to be kind of kept in mind that it is saturated as of right now. So the same job board that everyone's going to, the same positions everyone's going to, you're going to as well. We want to differentiate that approach, especially when you're applying. So you can look at other job boards such as VentureLoop, Built-in. Built-in was a campus-based job board. Their UI is very clean when you go on there. They focus a lot in terms of tech and startups. You can go on Remotive. That's like remote IVE. And that was actually built during the pandemic. And that offers obviously a lot more remote work as we kind of progress this way, at least this year. And I think also quite heavily into the future as well. You can go into things like Planted. There's generally quite a few job boards you can look through. What I would actually steer clear of, I'm glad you kind of brought up this question. I would generally steer clear of places like Indeed,
Yeah.
Career Builder, Monster, ZipRecruiter. These are very popular job boards. I think that everybody knows. And when I'm working one-on-one with clients, I always ask, okay, great. Like, where are you generally looking for an opportunity? And
Yeah.
they'll always, I think to a very large degree, 95% of the time, say something along those lines, like, oh, I use Indeed as well. The problem with those specific companies, although they pay top dollar to be on top of the SEO search on Google, so you can go ahead and apply and upload your resume, unfortunately, the quality of those jobs isn't always best. So oftentimes the follow-up will be, I have been applying to these roles using Indeed, but I never hear anything back. I never hear a response. And eventually what they do receive is an email that has nothing to do with them whatsoever, for a job that, they're not really looking for, they're not qualified for. So it kind of becomes a waste of time. The ones that I mentioned before, primarily, can actually produce results much quicker. They're newer, they're cleaner, there's more dedication towards them. And I think when it comes to job boards alone, it's a very small equation of someone
Yeah.
actually looking and finding their next opportunity. But we can get to that in a second if you like.
Okay. And
Yeah.
okay, yeah, great. And what information do I need to be looking for if I am a job seeker?
In terms of a company?
Yeah, to find the
Yeah,
right one.
absolutely. Again, it has to align, I think, with your values and your criteria in terms of what that right company looks like. Oftentimes, it's a matter of understanding where your current skill sets are, what your level of experience is, and specifically why you feel like everything you've kind of amassed would be transferable, right? You want to be able to have a very sort of honest self-audit around your current skill set or what you need to do to gain a certain skill set in order to land at a company. So for example, oftentimes people that I work with will want to, go to a fan company, right? Facebook,
Yeah.
Amazon and so on and so forth, Apple, Netflix, Google, and a few other sort of in big tech and tech giants. And if they're not generally prepared, those are obviously very high coveted companies and positions. We always talk about building a leverage position in the middle. And what that means is going for a smaller firm to then use that to get to the Apple and the Google and the Facebook and so on and so forth, because it is a difficult climb. So although something might look ideal, right, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
we want to make sure that we're able to also meet that demand from current level of where we are. And if we can't, to then understand what steps need to be taken in order to get there.
Exactly. And what I mean by this is that the first contact you get with the company hiring someone is a paper or a post on job board or even on LinkedIn. So basically, how can you get something from this post and get it as an understanding that this company is the right for you? I mean, there are many companies that are not giant companies such as Google and Facebook that you mentioned earlier.
Right.
And I mean, those companies can be the ideal company for you, but you basically don't know many things on those companies, so you
Yeah.
basically just keep them sometimes, and that can be very that's a false that's a mistake to make this. I mean, people should be taking taking in consideration more the type of companies that are startups right now, and
Mm-hmm.
that can be very attractive for people to grow as long as the startup is growing. So
Agreed.
basically, it's very tough to get something from a paper, or even a post.
Right.
So basically, I think there is a lack of human process on it, and the companies can't really show their values, show their culture
Of course.
with the post. So that's something that is very damaging to some companies, because it's very hard to attract talents on their company. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, that's really something we really want to change at Jobamax. We really take into consideration the fact that there are many companies out there that are small companies that are looking for just telling to people that their company are right. So basically, they have the possibility to prove it in video, to show the job seekers that it's a company that can fit them. So basically, that's something we are working on a lot, and that we really want to change on the environment we are living on.
Absolutely. I think you make a really, really great point with that. You're absolutely right that, a job board is only going to tell you so much. Often job boards are written in a way and posted in a way that are the same as everywhere else, right? So you really can't extract the value. You cannot really extract what kind of culture it is, potentially what kind of working environment it is, generally how people feel when they are in the company in terms of what the team and the products that they're working on. So oftentimes, as I said before, being someone who is looking to apply for a new company for a specific role that they find attractive, the sort of send out of the resume application is a very small component of that. One of the key aspects of the coaching that I focus on, to the same vein, is this aspect of connecting to the people within the company first and during and after. Because only then, by speaking to the people that are actually involved within the space that you think you want to occupy at that moment, will you be able to really understand what it's potentially like working amongst those teams. And this doesn't have to mean just targeting recruiters and HR professionals or hiring managers.
Exactly.
Everybody else does. You can connect to anyone specific that has had some experience there, whether it's they've been there only for a month and they've just started and they're getting their bearings, or they've been there 10 years. The main idea is that you will be extracting data from them in terms of what it's actually like to work there. And that will inform your decision a lot more, not just in terms of whether you should apply or not, but also give you invaluable insight from the inside to then for you to take when you are interviewing with a hiring manager, to kind of drop that inside knowledge in terms of what kind of projects they're potentially working on, things that you've kind of gathered from the culture in terms of a theme specifically around why you potentially would like to work there. So I 100% agree with you there. Human to human interaction is of utmost importance. I always say this, and maybe I should hashtag it somewhere, but in stuff, humans hire humans at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. And job seekers and recruiter are equal. You know what I mean? They want to get a lot of information about job seekers, and it should be the same. Job seekers want to know a lot about companies. It's not because company is paying the person that there should be like a difference. It's human to human, as you said, and that's very important to take it into consideration when hiring someone.
Yeah.
Okay, now Albano, I have a great news. Okay, I got an interview for a job. Okay, that's nice, but my inquiry is now, how do I stand out and nail the interview?
Sorry, say that one more time. I lost you there for a second.
How do I stand out and nail the interview?
How do you stand out and ace the interview specifically? And you've just received basically the go-ahead that you have landed an interview.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. Okay. Well, again, depending on sort of the experience and what the role is that you're going for, it's going to naturally require some preparation around just generally based knowledge around the company. The people that will be interviewing you, you want to kind of get that out of the way first to understand who you'll be connecting with and trying to find something specific around what you're going to speak on. I think the main thing to keep in mind when you're interviewing, outside of the base sort of behavioral and situational questions that will always come up no matter the industry, things like, tell me about yourself, and what are your salary expectations, especially. Those answers need to be ready, and those answers need to follow the same sort of thematic stream, if you will, when it comes from your resume to your cold emails to your LinkedIn profile to the interview. There needs to be an aligned sort of connection with everything, right? So there can't be anything that's out of whack. I think when you come to sort of acing an interview, again, as I said before, it should be a conversation. It should not be an interrogation, right? So going into the mindset that you're going in there to basically express, these people don't know you yet. That's what you're there for.
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
To express specifically why you're right for the job, right? And just like you would have any other conversation, it should feel the same way. I said this in a post a little while back. An interview is basically just a conversation with an opportunity attached, right? So oftentimes, if we're talking as friends, we're just talking, right? And of course, you want to be presenting yourself professional. That goes without saying. But I think what gets sort of in the way for a lot of job seekers is this mindset where it's already attached to the outcome, where it's, oh man, if I mess up on this answer, what's going to happen? Or if I don't do this, what's going to happen? And the real answer to that is like nothing, right? Because your life was the same right as before the interview was happening, and it should really be the same during and after. The person that you are meeting across really shouldn't matter to a large degree, because they're not going to really dictate your worth or your value. So I would take any and every interview as you're kind of landing them as an opportunity just to practice, of course, for yourself, but also just begin to sort of build that confidence that it doesn't matter which interview this is. You know your value, you understand your experience, you know how to convey it properly, you know how to communicate it effectively. And if the other side, for whatever reason, doesn't resonate with it, then you have to move on immediately after, right? There's no point, and I think this is very difficult for people, but there's no point in like beating yourself up and thinking, oh man, what if I said this differently? Or obsessing about like when this answer happened. Those things are just simply not productive, right? It is a very much so a two-way partnership. It is a two-way relationship between you and the interviewer or interviewers. You never know what happens once you leave the room. They could have another chat internally and say they have someone else within the company they want to promote, or it's the hiring manager's nephew. You never know what the other end goal is. But in order for you to ace it, you have to be prepared specifically to speak to your experience. You have to be able to communicate effectively and eloquently. You have to keep it in a certain time frame. You have to, I would ideally say, between 90 seconds to 2 minutes per answer. You have to be prepared to discuss salary expectations. You have to be able to use certain frameworks in order to keep yourself in control the entire time and know that it's a long game, right? Jobs are generally never decided on the first round. So you have to think about, okay, great. This foremost, this present impression matters, but how am I setting myself up for the next one and the next one and the next one? And a quick tip to do that at the very end is to always ask at the end of an interview, what do next steps look like? Just so I can prepare adequately, what do next steps look like? Are you able to tell me a little bit more about that, who I'll be meeting? And that way, any info and data that you get, you can then prepare for the next set.
Yeah, exactly. And do I need to flatter the company?
I think if you can do it well. No, I think oftentimes when people are enthusiastic about potentially working at a company, right, and nerves set in, and if they are trying to, as you said, flatter the company, it will start to come off oftentimes as disingenuous, right? Where they say, "Oh, your company's this, and you guys are doing that," and depending on the person, I think oftentimes it somehow negatively impacts them, right? It's just like, okay, great, like this is rehearsed. I think the only moment where you really need to flatter a company is when they ask you, well, why us, right? Why Jobamax? Why Alta Ventures? At that point, you should be prepared to speak as to why you'd want to work there. And obviously research would inform that answer specifically. But other than that, I wouldn't go, overstress and overdo it around flattering them every second. It's like any other relationship if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And now again, another question that go along with this one, but what mistakes should be avoided during an interview? The most common mistake. Yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, virtually, virtuality has kind of changed, I think, some of the dynamics of things like shaking someone's hand, right? And standing up when someone's walking into the room and sitting up professionally to a degree. Those things I think we would kind of take into account pre-COVID. As for now, I think a few mistakes, and I guess most common mistakes now, would be one, angling your camera. Specifically, I've done mock interviews with clients where I can only see like the top of their head, or
mistake,
the background that's messy. For example, a lot of people will take their calls given their circumstance and their household. They'll take them in their bedroom, but the bedroom looks as if like a tornado went through. People will always judge no matter what, and you could be the best candidate, but let's say the person on the side who's interviewing you will make a judgment off the fact that there are clothes in the background or it doesn't look tidy, it doesn't look neat. So you always want to show up professionally. Attire is another thing. It really depends on where you are interviewing as well. So if you're going to finance, it's perfectly normal to wear a button down potentially, right? And if you really feel like it, wear on top of that as well. If it's tech, wear a button down, depending. If you're going for a product management role, if you're going for a software engineer, maybe wear a polo. Obviously, we don't want to be there and be uncomfortable in what we're wearing as well, right? Depending on the interview, it could be very long. So you want something comfort fitting. I would not show up, obviously, in things that you would not show up to work in real life virtually, right? So no tank tops, and I wouldn't show up in sunglasses like you're going to the beach, and I would simple things such as that. And then, of course, moving from just the appearance in terms of mistakes, not being prepared, not knowing who you're speaking with, not being able to, again, communicate in terms of your resume and your background. Having conversation with someone else while the interview is going on, not properly muting yourself when the other side is speaking, just in case a distracting noise could happen within your surroundings. Not having any music playing, right? Looking as if you are ready for the interview, having proper lighting as well. They found that, especially during COVID and all these different things, there were studies that were done. And if there's ever a lag in terms of an answer because of technical difficulties at times, if people have trouble hearing you, if people have trouble seeing you or understanding what you're saying, and let's say your screen freezes, it immediately subconsciously shoots off a signal for most people that they're having a negative experience, right? So everything that you can do to kind of mitigate that so it works in your favor, I would endorse.
Yeah, exactly. You said it. And something that's happened in everyone's life once at least, it's when you don't get the job. You missed an opportunity. How do I stay motivated to look for my ideal company after that?
Absolutely. It's happened to me a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think to everyone. Yeah.
Of course.
And even more when you are young, it can be scary. It can scare a lot of companies to have a junior. So basically, a lot of university students are looking for part-time, or after graduation, they are looking for their first job, and they have to work very very hard to find the right company, and first to find a job. So basically, to find the ideal company is even harder. So basically, when you don't get a company, you missed job. How do I stay motivated?
Yeah, it's a great question. You're absolutely right. It does happen quite a bit when you're junior, but I also think on the other end, it also happens a lot when you're senior. So I've had a ton of conversation in the last couple of months with people who have been doing something, let's say, for 15 years, 20 years, and now all of a sudden they're laid off due to COVID. They have no idea kind of what's next. And I feel like even then it's two extremes, but it can be extremely discouraging. One of the key things to think about when, let's say, you are receiving a rejection is that, one, it's not only happening to you to a large degree. And going back to what I said earlier in terms of attaching yourself to the outcome, I think that's the number one thing to kind of focus on that you really don't need to do. You go through the process because it is a process. You apply, you follow up, you set up an interview, you prepare for it, and you interview and you kind of hope for the best in terms of the next round. Again, if it doesn't pan out, your only job is to learn from it and move on.
Yeah, exactly.
It will not serve you to sort of wallow within that rejection. And it doesn't matter what the company is, especially if it's larger companies as well. There's always going to be another opportunity. They're always hiring. And even if it's a smaller company, it's kind of the same thing. The one key component that a lot of people don't do, and I definitely recommend doing, is that even if you've gone through multiple rounds and it ends up in you not getting an offer, stay in touch with everyone that you spoke with, because the next touch point will not be cold. You've already interviewed, you've already had a chance to speak with them, and you can maintain a relationship moving forward, whether it's in a month or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 down the line. You can build in a very effective network. So when the time comes and you've potentially gained experience elsewhere, or there's another role that's better well suited, they'll think of you top of mind because you are constantly having conversations with them. And I think that's a very effective way to still sort of align to your target companies, even if it's a no for right now.
Yeah, that's something that is very very hard to for the people who get their first rejection. But they have to keep motivation, they have to stay motivated, to keep looking for another company, because if a company didn't select them, it just means that it's not their ideal company. It's as simple as this, because the ideal company should be in both sense, so it
Again,
just means that's yeah.
It's just like any other relationship. right?
Yeah,
You might
exactly.
have to see a few people before you end up with the person you're gonna potentially marry, if you will. And it's the same thing when a company. It's if it's not a fit for right now, it's not a fit for right now, and you have to accept that in a way. If you, again, it's so much more so on you in terms of preparation specifically, and doing your best, and looking for different resources, and hiring a coach if you need to, or looking at things like Jobamax, or looking at platforms that will aid you in terms of what you're looking for next, or potentially you can mitigate some weaknesses. But again, it's a two-way relationship. So if there is some sort of disconnect from the other side, then that's what it's going to be. And that's perfectly fine. You have to stay motivated to say, okay, great, this one didn't work out. There's definitely another ideal company for me somewhere else. I just have to find it. And then luck and timing also are massive factors that contribute to your success. So the onus isn't always on you 100% of the time. There has to be sometimes this alignment that's also out of your control to work in your favor.
Exactly. So I can conclude by saying that when you miss a company, you just move forward and you go get the ideal one.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Okay, Albano, thank you very much to be on Jobamax Club today. Thank you very much for your time. It was really interesting to know more about and to give some tips to the job seekers, because there are many people looking for jobs out there all around the world that are looking for advices. There will be a replay that will be available within a few days. Okay, and then people will be able to take notes if they want from your advices, and then to move forward and get the ideal company and their dream job.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for the time and for having me on the show, Alex. And we'll definitely stay in touch. And as
Yeah,
for any job seekers that are listening, I would just say, and I would say this to every client that I work with, it's a matter of when, not a matter of if. So it's really only a matter of time. And if anybody needs
exactly.
anything, feel free to always just shoot a message on LinkedIn or anything. I'm available for anyone who has any questions or is looking for the next career opportunity.
Exactly. And what I could say also is that if you're a university student looking for a job, you can just go on jobamax.com and you will be able to find your ideal company very soon.
Absolutely, 100%.